This is a question from Scottish farmer Neil Wilson. What is your expectation that CAP reform can balance delivering value to UK farming while keeping a green agenda?
Well, CAP reform is going to take a long while, and for the first time it involves 27 countries and the European Parliament in producing the conclusion. So it's going to take some time, and it makes it very difficult to foresee the outcome. Certainly from our objectives, we believe that the concept of the CAP has to be continuing the path set in 2005 of moving towards the marketplace for the return for agricultural products, but also to move to increase the availability of funding for green measures, which is why we believe we should be shifting some resources from Pillar 1, the single farm payment, into Pillar 2 so that we can enhance our ability to help farmers with the environment, but also we can enhance our ability to spend money or invest in competitiveness to help the industry compete for what we are absolutely certain is a future of declining single farm payments.
Question from Hertfordshire farmer John Birchall. How does the government define sustainability in relation to agriculture, and how do you intend to promote it?
Well, our sustainability is about producing more with less inputs, looking after the natural environment, our natural resources, using less fertilizers and using less of anything that is exhaustible effectively to make it as valuable as possible. How we're going to go about it? Well, we're shortly going to be publishing a Natural Environment White Paper, which will go into this in some considerable detail. And then later in the year there'll be a water white paper, because water is one of those key resources and indeed could ultimately be the most limiting factor for food production. So we'll be laying out our substantive plans over the coming months.
Question from sheep breeders Neil and Janet McQuiston. Do you want to see a reduction in the CAP budget?
Yes, we do. We do think that the overall CAP budget in Europe should be reduced. It's been falling for a number of years now, but we think that trend should continue, and the reason we do so is partly because obviously of the economic situation facing the UK and the rest of Europe, but partly because I really do think there is a good future for agriculture because of the increasing world demand for food over the next 40 or 50 years. And I think that rising demand is the ideal background against which we can start to think about reducing the overall level of support going into the industry, because we don't believe it will be necessary, but we fully believe it's necessary now. We are not calling for an end to direct payments either now or over the next CAP reform period, but we do think the longer term projection should be a decline.
Question from NFU Kent County Chairman Charles Tassell. Can you explain the logic of cutting feed-in tariffs in July rather than next May, thereby stalling applications for solar energy?
Well, this is really my colleagues in the Department of Energy and Climate Change. What they were concerned about was that there was a massive surge in interest in photovoltaic operations on very large scale, farmers putting fields aside for PV, and that wasn't what the feed-in tariff was designed for. It was designed for much more local, small-scale stuff. Also, it is a cost to the taxpayer. Feed-in tariffs are a subsidy, and inevitably budgets are limited. But also because it became clear, and it's self-evident almost in the question, that the fact there was this massive interest wasn't because everybody suddenly became massive enthusiasts for PV. It was because they suddenly realised here was an opportunity to make some money, which indicates actually the subsidy was a bit too generous.
A question from Rob York in Abergavenny, Wales. Who is running the countryside? Public opinion influenced by NGOs or science-led experts backed by the government?
Well, ultimately, the countryside is largely run by the people who live there and manage it and run it, and farmers are absolutely critical to that. The government has to set the overall framework of policy, whether it's on agriculture or the natural environment and conservation or anything else. But we're putting through the localism bill, which is about driving power down to rural communities much more than ever before. But we also recognise that the wider issues of sustainable agriculture, food production, the future of our lives, of our wildlife and conservation. Government has a big role to play in that. In that we are guided, yes, primarily by science. We are a science-led government, but we can't do it without recognising the general flow of public opinion, not responding to every single whim, but actually saying there is massive public interest out there in our wildlife and our landscape, and that has to be recognised. It is not an issue of food versus the environment. We have to learn to do both together.
And finally, a question from Alan Spedding. When can we expect a decision on a badger cull?
Well, we've made it quite clear that there are a number of issues that have to be resolved that emerged during the consultation period, and we will be announcing our conclusions on the issue of culling badgers alongside launching a wider package of measures in the not too distant future.
Thanks. Thank you very much.